Hello and welcome. Thank you for listening. I am Lillian Agbayagbe. This is Diaspora Dialogue Series with LA. Members of the diaspora all over the world, and we come seeking the blessings of a new land. But the blessings of the new land doesn't mean that the homeland doesn't have its benefits. So we talk about the beauty of the homeland, and we talk about the benefits of global integration. In past episodes, some of our guests have shared their thoughts on how those of us in the diaspora can interact and should interact with our fellow citizens in the homeland. On this special edition, we are looking at some of the thoughts that have been shared about should this be a collaborative partnership? Is there room for us to work together? How indeed can we work together for the benefit of our homeland and tapping on the blessings of being in the diaspora? Listen to this special episode. And speaking about those abroad and those in Nigeria, sometimes there's this conflict, and I don't know whether it's real or whether people are faking it. But sometimes people in Nigeria are like, if you really care about Nigeria, come back here and sit down. You can't live abroad and say you're contributing to the discussions on Nigeria. What's your take on that sort of narrative?
Not really. I mean, I have lived, so in the last 15 years, I've lived about 5 years on and off in Nigeria. But even prior to the first engagement with UBA, I did stuff with Lagos State. While I was here during when they were going to set up the home ownership mortgage scheme, I acted as the loan origination, the software management. I served as a consultant. So you can actually, you don't have to be physically on ground to make an impact. I mean, lots of Nigerians, especially the guys in the medical field, I know doctors every year, they go to the west, the east, the north, they pay the bills, they take the equipment and everything. They do surgery pro bono, so I mean, you don't have to be there physically. It's all about the will and having the grace and the interest, so you can make a positive impact, whilst you're still in diaspora. You don't have to, you don't have to, I mean, take your bags and say, if you want to go into politics, it's a different ball game. It requires you to be on ground. If you want political appointments, it's who they see, they relate with. So, but if you just want to, impact your area of specialty or, then you can do it from here.
Absolutely. I think it's important for us to continue to have these conversations. We're not competing with ourselves. If we have skills, knowledge, and competences that can benefit our home country and our colleagues, that we should be able to share them. It's not a case of one person is better than the other. It's just we're working for collective good of the country.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that's why I identify with I think Nigeria, there's an agency that Abike Dabiri heads. It's something to do with diaspora. Yeah, I think it might seem like a small agency, but if it is fully, the potential is it's so. What it can do, it's enormous, and what it can do, it's so enormous. So I identify with that agency, and I hope that it will be able to reach its potential sooner than later, because Nigerians are everywhere, as you know. Diaspora is huge. Asia, Latin America.
When we rolled out, the Diaspora Dialogue series, somebody said to me, Elliot, what are you doing? And I said, oh, we're trying to change the narrative that we're all the same. And then they said to me, well, you should also get the Nigerians abroad to talk about the fact that not everybody in Nigeria is suffering or doing things wrong, you people abroad are very quick to cast aspersions or whatever, highlight bad things that happen in Nigeria and things like that. Is that a genuine divide do you see between Nigerians here and at home? If so, do you have any thoughts on what's causing it and what we can do about it?
Very good question. So the way that I would approach this, and if I was responding to that person, it would be that we need to separate the government of Nigeria
Mm-hmm.
from the average Nigerian citizen.
Okay.
And in doing so, what I just spoke about in your previous question becomes very glaring, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is hurting the Nigeria reputation? Some people believe that their reputation is being hurt because of Nigerians who live abroad and committing crimes. But then I always beg to differ. Those Nigerians would not have left Nigeria if they had criminal intent. I doubt that that's why they left,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the system must have allowed them to pass through for them to be out there.
Mm.
So the answer that I have for that person, and I do happen to interact with a lot of Nigerians, the Nigerians in the corporate world, yes, they're doing fine. And I'm not just talking about the ones that live in Lekki or Banana Island.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about places like Jos, places like Abuja, places like Port Harcourt, right? Even back in the day, Warri, Benin City, Ibadan, where I was originally born. So you can see that even when you leave those areas and start moving further up north, like Kano, Sokoto, Kaduna, there are very strong, what I consider to be intelligentsia of educated elites. Those people are not Nigeria's problem. Nigeria's problem is one of leadership. Leadership at the federal level, leadership at the state level, leadership at the local government level. So corruption is the least of Nigeria's problem. Now, you may want to make that a completely separate program so we can talk about it. But sometimes people tend to dive into corruption and want to say, oh, that's up. No. Anybody that talks to me and says corruption, I look at you as intellectually lazy, because corruption has nothing to do with Nigeria's problem. Nigeria's problem is lack of leadership, effective leadership. Now, leader is not a leader just by title. You can acquire the title all you want. Knowing how to lead is critical. So until we start teaching kids from kindergarten and up the way up to university level what leadership means and how to be an accountable leader and how to be a transformative leader and how to be an effective leader, that problem will continue. So if I'm answering that person, the problem is not the general public, the problem is the leadership.
So there's no need for us, if I'm understanding you correctly, there's no need for us to be pitched against each other. We're not, Nigerians abroad and Nigerians at home. We're not our enemies or anything like that. Our concern should be one of the leadership of the country and making sure that we have effective leadership.
Very true. Let me show you a sign. This is what needs to happen between the two sides. Because of lack of leadership, this is what we have.
And
There's
so
no
for those who are listening, just listening on the podcast, he's putting his hands together to say unity is what we need to have. And he's putting his hands apart to say what we have is disunity. We're not connected.
Yep, and you need a leader that can bring the glue. The leadership is the glue that brings both sides together. And until both sides come together, I'm afraid Nigeria's development will remain stunted.
Wow, wow. How do we, I know you've sort of made some, you belong to the Nigerians in Diaspora organization. Is that an attempt? How do you try to make sure that we're getting leadership to understand what's going on? And that will bring me to another question. Actually, I've heard some people say, you guys live abroad, you have no business with what's going on in Nigeria. If you really care, you should come back home. What's your take on that?
Well, let me answer the first part of the question first, and then I'll come back to that second. Both very, very important question, and actually even genuine or more germane to the Diaspora Dialogue series itself, because that's what I think most people would want to get out of series like this. The first part is dealing with how do you do it? It's not just Nigerians in diaspora. There are so many Nigerian organizations. So I don't think the issue is a lack of the organizations. In fact, I just woke up this morning and found out that a new Yoruba organization was created. I'm like, seriously, we already have so many Yoruba organizations. Why are you guys creating a new one? So there is always a Nigerian group, both at home and here and abroad. What I think is lacking, and this goes back to that leadership thing that I was talking about, is that we do not have true partners on the Nigeria side. I cannot tell you how many times I have gone to Nigeria with the intent of setting up a business. And of course, when we go, we don't go with 3 months or 6 months vacation. We go with 2 weeks, maybe, if you're lucky, 4 weeks, right? Yeah. So when you reach there and they're frustrating your effort, and you're like, guys, why do I have to kill myself? I am actually trying to bring businesses to you. I'm trying to hire your brothers and your sisters. Why don't I just go across the border to Cameroon? Why don't I go across to Benin or to Ghana, where the process is a lot more simpler? So to register a business in Nigeria takes more than 90 days. Now, somebody told me they've streamlined it. I said, okay, until I see it for myself, I don't know. That same business, and this is true story I'm telling you, that same business took 4 days to register in Ghana.
Oh, wow.
Same business, same profile, same CEO and everything, right? Second thing, they tell us, oh, you guys are in diaspora. How come your kids don't have Nigerian passports? I cannot tell you how many Nigerians have made every effort to get Nigerian passports for their kids. The process to get a Nigerian passport in Nigeria is too exorbitant, unless they are not aware that you live in diaspora, because the moment they find out you live in diaspora, the process is unfundable. But that same process, you go to other countries, Ethiopia, South Africa, you get their passport within 2 weeks. The passport. So that issue is we don't have partnership, right? We have people in Nigeria who claim they're representing diasporans, whether at the federal level or the state level. I hardly ever see them do that bridging of the gap that I just talked about when I put my hands together. So, but coming back to the second part of your question, the second part of your question actually has to do with, if you can remind me again, what was that second part?
So the second part of the question is, should they say, if you really care about Nigeria, you should come back home. If you're living abroad, you really shouldn't be putting your mouth, as it were, in the things that are going on in Nigeria.
Very, very, yeah. So that second part, I beg to differ, right? I beg to differ, and I give very simple examples. I'll give you India as an example. I'll give you South Korea as an example. I'll give you China as an example. An average Chinese that lives in America don't go to China. They don't. But what they do here influences a lot of things that happen in China. So the mistake that is often made in Nigeria, and I suspect that in a way that's the reason we don't have that partnership, is where people see me and I arrive, and in their head, oh, he's going to outshine me, or he's going to overshadow me, or he's bringing his dollar, and his dollar will dwarf my naira. That's not strategy. My Indian friends do when they go to India, and I travel to India a lot myself, is, oh, Dr. Agbegbe, you have a program called Diaspora Series. Wow. Come home to India. Let's show you how we can partner you with other diasporans that have returned that are doing very well. That's what a typical Indian would do. They won't shut you down. They won't try to isolate you. They won't try to exclude you. Or sometimes some of the things that I've seen where they even try to belittle you. So we need that level of partnership. Through NIDO, we've made series of proposals over the years, none of which has ever been implemented. The only NIDO implementation that I've ever seen
and for those who don't know, NIDO is Nigerians in Diaspora Organization.
Thank you. Yeah, and the only outcome from all the proposals we've ever proposed was the creation of NIDCOM. But even NIDCOM today, they're even denying that, oh, you guys didn't know how we got created. But we know, those of us who actually wrote the paperwork and did the pushing of the legislation know that we inspired it. Now, we can do more. Every end of July, for the last, since the Obasanjo administration, right? I think it's been at least 20 years since Obasanjo was last in office, right? So every July, Nigeria hosts something called the Diaspora Day. So for the last 20 years or more, diasporans have been coming to Nigeria at their own expense and have been proposing ideas. Find me one person at the federal government level, at the state government level, or the local government level that have implemented anything that anybody has brought from the diaspora. Until Nigeria learns to do that, you will continue to see that dichotomy. Let me give it to you in an example. COVID-19. When COVID hit, everybody, even the United States, was relying on Nigerian doctors and Nigerian nurses. Guess who Nigerian government went to bring? They went to China to bring somebody.
Oh, wow.
It doesn't make sense. Other countries are relying on your own citizens abroad. And you cannot even consult with your own citizens abroad, and yet you want me to come home? Are you serious?
Yes, absolutely.
I miss Nigeria deeply. I miss everything about Nigeria. And for me, it's not so much that I'm detached or something I want to reconnect to, but now crystal clear with, you talk about these opportunities, or let's talk about power to transform or to create, to effect change. Now we have it. For me, I yearn for the opportunity to actually make that happen in my community, in my country. You know, so when I look at the news and like, this is not rocket science, you know, like when you look at it, it's like, you know, so little things. I was talking to my dad, and he shares a paradigm where you put accountability on the people for the environment. Like, what are the people doing? I share a paradigm with the system. Why would you let the system even exist for such a thing to happen in the first instance? So you hear some news happening in Nigeria, like, how is a system that possible that someone can actually get away with that? So, and we go back and forth, and he used to live here. I said that we're not superhuman in America when we drive responsibly. There are consequences that are predictable, you know, for overspeeding, for camera ticket, for failure to pay your ticket, for failure to show up because you had a whatever issue, because they are predictable consequences for that. Because of that system, there's responsible driving, not because we're superhuman people when it comes to driving. You know, so that is really, really what I yearn for. And that is really what I miss about.
Wow. That is so, you know, when you talk about consequences, I tell you, the first time I got a speeding ticket, I drove under the speed limit for the next 6 months. I'm telling you, I just heard this siren go up behind me. I was like, you could not get me to drive at the speed limit. I drove under the speed limit for the next 6 months. I was shaking in my shoes. And this is one of those things I always say, that when there's no consequences for poor behavior, there's no motivation to modify behavior. You know, and it's not rocket science, like you said. What is the, you know, there's this thing, I'm a public health practitioner in my other life, you know, and there's this phrase in public health, what we call reciprocal determinism, that the people influence the environment and the environment influences the people. So yes, it's the people that are going to put the system in place, you know, so maybe that's what your dad's saying, that the people need to put the system in place, but it's the system in place that determines how the people will behave, you know, so it kind of goes back and forth. Why can't we hold ourselves accountable? Why can't we hold our leaders accountable? You know, why is it possible? I remember it was we had one inspector general at one time, Tafa Balogun, who was arrested for stealing all this money. I'm like, how in the world does the inspector general of a country conceptualize, that I can embellish this kind of, and actually goes ahead to do it.
To do it.
He must know that it's possible to get away with it, you know. And if he knows that it's possible to get away with it, what's to stop him from doing it? That's so remarkable. Do you think, when you think about us getting there, you know, like us getting to this place where we can change the systems, what are your thoughts on how that's going to happen for us? I mean, we are how many years old now, and we've had all this, we've had the military and we have the democratic government, and we're still where we are today. Are you hopeful? What do you think needs to change in the general sphere of things for us to get to this place where you think that Nigeria can be at?
100%. You know, you may have some questions for me about Nigerian Center, but this is where I agree with my dad, that, you know, when we look at our environment and how like complex seemingly some problems are, we just lose every sense of agency. Like we can't do anything about it. You know, but ultimately, I think we shouldn't give too much power to the government to transform things and start taking initiative, a sense of activating sense of agency in our own little way, whatever we can. So if you look at our community in the United States, we've been here for a very long time. And you would think like a community like Nigeria, which is the largest Black immigrant group in the United States, most educated, most successful, all of that, this wonderful image that we have here, you would think that we would have a community center. We don't need a government to give us a community center. You know, you would think that would have things like that, you know, but it took just one idea from a private citizen to make that happen, you know.
And it's just the first community center in the country. I know it's the first community in the DMV area, but I wonder, do you know if it's the first in the country?
In the entire country.
Oh my goodness.
In the entire country. So look at what happened over the weekend. So we had Passport DC, which is like a diplomatic festival that embassies represent the government. And when embassies could not represent the government, the community organizations stepped up. For several years, Nigeria didn't have any participation until people like us say, let's put a representation for Nigeria. So I think that we have to start activating that sense of leadership and that sense of agency that I believe we have that in our own sector. Another example I give in Nigeria is, right now we relish and we celebrate corporate Nigeria, but there's people like you and I who came here for grad school. Some of them only have a stint of 1 or 2 years grad school in NYU, in Harvard, you know, Columbia, and they went back home to build a bank. And they created an entire industry. It wasn't easy, it was challenging, but they got it done. You know, I think that is for me the big power of being a diaspora. The opportunity to take what works in the system and figure out ways in which you can make that happen where you're coming from. I think the ripple effect of that, you know, is going to permeate the entire system at some point. So I'm very, very much hopeful for that.
Don't forget to like, to share, and to comment. Let us know what resonates with you. What are you doing as a member of the diaspora? What are you doing as a member of the homeland? And how can we work together? This is Lillian Agwegbe. Thank you for listening to the Diaspora Dialogue series.
David,